We're back in the smoke-filled room, and people can't stop talking about politics, whether it's national, because there's all sorts of stuff going on nationally, or here in Illinois, because there's another election just a little over 3 weeks away. If you think there's always an election in Illinois, that's because there's always a damn election in Illinois. We wonder why everybody's so political in the state. It's because we're always in politics. So we got a lot to get into. Let me introduce our awesome guest that we have this week. We have returning Kevin Coyne. He's actually, I don't know if you were the chairman last time you were here, chairman of the DuPage County Republicans, founder and president of Safe Suburbs USA, a whole bunch of other hats you wear, including you used to be on the Naperville City Council. I have a feeling we'll talk Naperville in a little bit. Kevin Coyne, what's going on, bud?
Oh, busy. Happy to be here. Happy to talk politics. We'll figure out DuPage. We'll fix the calendar. Don't worry.
Well, hey, listen, if you guys want to have a good time, make sure you follow Kevin on social media because he's never boring on social media, that's for sure. All right, we also have with us, for the first time for one of our regular episodes, we've got Corey Allen. He's the vice chairman of the Tazewell County Republican Party, also a veteran from the U.S. Navy. So thank you for being here, Corey, and thank you for your service.
Appreciate it. It's nice to be on a regular episode. It felt like we were kind of flying without a parachute last time when we were at the Illinois Federation of Republican Women, but appreciate you guys having me back on.
Well, apparently you passed that was your test. You passed it. You succeeded.
Barely.
So now you've graduated to the full episode, so congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We also have with us Patrick Harlan. He's a candidate for the Illinois Senate in the 36th district. He's also vice chairman of the Knox County Republican Party. And I didn't remember about this. You ran for Congress in aisle 17 in the past. So Patrick, you've been around. Glad to have you with us today.
Thank you for the invite, guys. I'm really looking forward to today. So thanks again for bringing me on.
And of course, as always, we've got Michael, we've got Chris. I could picture both of them in what was the non-State of the Union, State of the Union. I could picture Chris holding up some of those signs to heckle. I could picture Michael as Mary Miller, telling everybody, come on, stand up, stand up. I totally could picture you two out there in DC.
I hope Chris wouldn't be heckling. That was a great speech.
I don't appreciate my MAGA bona fides being questioned on this podcast.
Yeah, right.
Man, we're starting off with bona fides, and we've got a whole episode to go. That's I like it. Let's get. Let's make up some words in this podcast. Let's do it. All right. Well, speaking of DC, let's start there. So there was a speech this week. I had to Google this. I didn't remember that it's actually not officially a State of the Union speech because this is a new thing they've been doing the last 15 years or so, where the incoming president will give a speech, even though the outgoing president already gave the official State of the Union. So it's not officially a State of the Union. It's just a presidential address, but it was a State of the Union. And I'm sure you guys have lots of thoughts about it. There was a lot of drama. Democrats proved just how childish they are throughout the whole speech. Trump was Trump a few times and gave it back to him. So, I guess if you can't give it, don't dish it. Or if you can't dish it, don't take it, whatever. But either way, lots of fun. Lots of drama, lots of intrigue coming out of DC from that speech. And it really kicks off our first topic, which is this. Clearly, Democrats haven't figured out yet why they lost in November of 2024. Now, let me clarify. We're not talking Illinois. We're talking about the other 49 states. But nationwide, Democrats did poorly in 2024. And the speech this week and their reactions during it proved why. What do you guys think?
Well, I can go ahead. I thought the speech was fantastic. I found myself smiling throughout. I thought the Democrats looked very childish, really throughout the speech, particularly, when you had the young cancer survivor, young African-American child, excited to be involved with law enforcement. Great moment. You would think that could get everybody on their feet applauding. They can't even applaud for that.
Yep.
Just divisive and petty. And I think we looked like the adults in the room during that address.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare, Kevin, that we Republicans look like the adults in the room, but I'll take it when it happens. I mean, you're right. The DJ Daniel moment was it was heartwarming, especially when he was warming up to it and then just sort of leaned over and gave the guy a big hug. I mean, you're heartless if you don't think that was cute, and you can't set aside your partisanship for 15 seconds to cheer a young black child, a young black boy who's going through a lot in his life. Give him a special moment. Put partisanship aside for a second.
Yeah, totally.
What else you guys got?
Well, and you can't forget about Al Green and his antics right out of the gate, right? And he's kind of known for, kind of causing problems and stirring the pot. And he lived up to that name. That's for sure. They voted to censure him, on Thursday. So
who held the gavel for that, Mike?
Congressman Mike Bost.
There you go.
Isn't that great?
You know, the Al Green moment didn't come as a surprise to me because I'm one of those masochists who gets off on watching the Republicans make fools of themselves during the speaker vote. And every time Al Green would vote for Hakeem Jeffries for speaker, it was like a 2-minute long speech. And all you hear is whoever's got the gavel is banging and like, all you have to do is say, Jeffries, man, like, come on, let's go. And he would just keep going and going and going. It's really sad that, you know, and the Republicans are guilty of this too. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I believe, shouted down Biden during one of his speeches, but obviously it wasn't to the extent that it was with Al Green on Tuesday night's speech. The little like fans that everybody was holding were so stupid. You know, nobody was applauding for anything that was even remotely good. I remember even back to Trump's State of the Union addresses from his first term. There were some things he would bring up that other Democrats would actually stand and applaud and say, "Hey, I think that's a great idea. We should do that." But we've gotten to the point where we can't even come to a consensus on any, you know, remotely, you know, bipartisan issues. And that's what I think is very sad. Republicans are guilty of this too. In fact, they hold probably a lot of the blame for why we've gotten to this point. But I do think the Democrats aren't doing themselves any favors for, you know, acting like children during the course of a speech. And it's already coming out in the press that, you know, Hakeem Jeffries, to his credit, you know, he told his caucus, like, guys, don't do this. This is going to make us all look like idiots. He told Al Green, hey, don't do this. Like, it's going to look bad. And everyone kind of told him, no, we're going to do this. And that's, you know, the Democrats have always been the party where they actually believe in top-down leadership structures where, you know, people do wield iron fists over their caucuses and over their party. But even Hakeem Jeffries can't seem to control his caucus anymore. And it's sad. It really is. We don't live in a bipartisan country anymore. And the Democrats are just proving time and time again why they're so out of touch with the American people.
Well, and Chris, I do concede your point that it was Wilson, a Republican, and with the "you lie," I think that was 2009. So I mean, this has been a trend that's growing, but there's a difference between an outburst by Marjorie Taylor Greene or an outburst by you know, one congressman versus, you know, people bringing signs, standing up, turning around, and having writing on the back of your shirts. Like, this isn't a sporting event. Like this, it's one thing to have an outburst, and I personally don't like that, and I have called that out in the past. Just have some decorum. But what happened here at this speech was way beyond that. Again, one thing to make a point, it's another thing to treat it like it's a ball game or a sporting event. And it was just disrespectful, I think, to the whole process. But I will say, I have been the skies have opened up, and I have learned what a brilliant strategy it is to hold up these dumb signs when people are speaking. So for the rest of this segment here, as you guys are speaking, I've got some signs that I've prepared that I'll hold up as you guys are talking. So carry on with your thoughts, whoever's crazy enough to want to go next.
Well, I think one thing on the signs, I mean, you're opening yourself up there for some Photoshop magic, right? I mean, you've seen the
my screen, it flips it.
You can't even see it. Hopefully you can.
I saw it.
He's a Swiftie.
Is it flipped? Is it flipped, or you guys read that?
I see it fine.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately,
Right. It's flipped on my screen, but as long as you can read it, keep going, Michael.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
Oh my God.
We're gonna have to take a screenshot of this and then Photoshop other things on it to make you look dumb, like they did to the Democrats the other night, because there are plenty of memes going around. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
I do think that Trump did a good job, especially at the beginning when Al Green was, you know, pulling his stunt or whatever you want to call it. He did hold his composure. He let the speaker handle it. They kicked him out. And even I think I heard on the radio today that there was around like maybe 10 Democrats in the House that voted in favor of the motion to censure Al Green. So I guess there are some people on that side of the aisle with a little bit of decorum, it sounds like.
Well, they are definitely regretting it. I mean, Chris was right that they did not want this to happen, at least leadership that had a brain. You saw an article in The Hill the day after where it said they called it self-owns and unhinged petulance, and said Democrats are furious that this backfired and underscored why they lost November's election in the first place, which, to be honest, is pretty accurate.
I think Trump did a great job calling out the lunatic left for what it is. I mean, that's why we keep on winning, right? I mean, they have to own up for what they're doing. Just recently here, just on Sunday alone, we went ahead and they had a big protest right here in Galesburg, you know, just saying that once again, they're still fighting the fact that, look, you guys keep losing. We had a clean sweep here in Knox County, you know, so it's like the truth is winning. And Trump's message is, look, I've been shot at twice, you know, I've been impeached, I've been persecuted by you guys. We're gonna keep on winning. So I love what he's doing. I love the fact that we're just gonna keep on standing strong and just keep pushing the message forward. So I appreciate everything about that speech, and what he did there was make him own it. Just make him own it.
Yeah. I don't know if you could read this on your phone, Patrick, but I'm calling you
I
out
love
for
it.
liking Nickelback.
All right, hey, that's cool. I like Nickelback. We'll jam with it.
Michael, you posted in our internal Discord. What was the approval rating from the speech? What did you find?
CBS News did a poll of the people that watched, and 76% said that they approved of the speech. And they went through a couple of other issues, like, did you like what Trump said about this issue? And a lot of them were, high 60s, like 68% agreed with him on this or that. So I think people enjoyed it. I mean, it was a good speech. We laughed, we cried. We're hopeful.
Let's set the expectations. I mean, if you liked Trump, you liked the speech. That's clear. The question is, how did independent voters feel? And that's what I want to get into here with the issues, because Rahm Emanuel this week talked about the problems in the Democratic Party, and he said that the problem here is just this focus on the woke culture. I'm reading here from his remarks at the Economic Club of Chicago, where he talked about how you can't be the party that believes in equity and then allow 2/3 of your kids not to be able to read. He said, I don't think culturally that being just into that generic woke debate is the way to go. I mean, the data is pretty clear that that's what people think we as in Democrats are all about. And he said the Democrats have sunk their own party focusing on this. And Michael, you noted this earlier. They had the bill this week about men playing or transgendered men being in women's sports, or transgendered women being in women's sports, however you want to word that. And not a single Democrat voted for it. Again, they're not getting the fact that it's their relentless pursuit of these woke politics that is causing average Americans not to agree with them. And even in light of us, we've got our problems on the Republican side. But when there was a video I saw that when Trump talked about how there's two genders, and they had on screen the lines of Republicans, Democrats, and independents and how they feel. And when Trump talked about two genders, Republicans went up, Democrats went down, and guess what? Independents went up. I mean, we are on with the majority of the American people on not dealing with the woke stuff, but the Democrats just don't get it. They keep going further and further left on these social policies.
Well, we've seen it on immigration as well. You look at those.
Michael, someone else is going to jump in.
Okay,
let them go ahead.
Go ahead.
But you're doing good.
Well, I was going to piggyback off what you said earlier, Michael, is that, the Democrats don't even listen to their own people. When you've got 10 people defecting to censure Al Green for that type of behavior, like, you can't even control yourself, yet alone try to bring those independents in, because they don't listen. They just tell us. And we see that here in Illinois, all the stuff that goes on. I mean, up there north, you've got the Democratic mayor having fistfights at her council meetings and stuff like that. Like, the average voter, right? The average voter doesn't want to deal with that from either party. They just want solutions. And that's what I applaud Trump for doing, is that he had this time around, he hasn't let his Twitter thumbs get in the way of actually producing productive legislation, or at least, moving the needle in the right way. You see the left jump at everything he does, the Zelensky thing in the Oval Office. I thought it was brilliant. He's doing what a good, strong leader does, yet we're sitting there listening to, actually, I do that. The Hawaiian pizza, it's awesome. So, trying to figure out how to take advantage of that here in Illinois as the center right, the Republicans, trying to figure out how to use that message, because we got 2.4 million people who voted for Trump. We should be able to take the governor's mansion if we can figure out how to not fumble this stuff. So if we listen and continue to let the Democrats not listen, it becomes very easy how to do this. So,
well, and this is where Democrats in Illinois have done a better job than Democrats nationally. They still have their far left fringe, and it's increasingly a larger percentage of the Democratic Party in the state. But with Pritzker sort of moderating that a bit, you can hear him both nationally and this state talking about how he just came out this week in a couple speeches where he was on the bad side, imploring Democrats to take it to the streets and burn everything down. And I don't love that, especially in light of all the political violence we've had to endure recently. But on the good side, talking about how, at least for his party, about how Democrats need to focus on the prices at the grocery store and, price of health care. Pritzker's been pushing that, and that has helped Democrats in Illinois, where they haven't gone as crazy as national Democrats into some of the far left stuff. They still go into it, and we still need to do a better job of highlighting it. But you can see it. Thankfully, Democrats nationwide haven't figured it out. That it's about kitchen table issues. It's about working families being able to afford to live, to pay for gas and utilities and groceries and rent and healthcare and mortgages. That's what it's about.
Well, and I think to your point, Collin, the Democrats in this state have done a good job of, like, you look at the mail that they send out before a November election, or you look at some of the comments that Pritzker makes, like, it seems like, oh, these people are level-headed. But then you go to the ILGA website and look through some of these bills, and you're like, oh, yeah, these people are not level-headed whatsoever. Yep. So there's a big disconnect between what they're saying and what they're doing. And I know the last, every episode since the beginning of February, we went through a list of how absurd these people are and that they're not serious people. I mean, they're not focused on the issues that impact people in this state. They're focused on...
Well, I mean, maybe it's just the media has their back, and I know I've got a few of you members of the media who text me every time I say that, but it's true. I mean, these crazy bills on the left don't get media coverage and doesn't get the splashy headlines of crazy Democrat wants to do X. But then if one Republican makes one comment on Twitter, it's 7 different headlines. Crazy Republican wants to do blah, blah, blah. I mean, so maybe that's why it doesn't feel like Democrats in the state are as crazy as they are. So,
well, and look at the IDNR stuff, right? The audit, and they failed their audit. They're getting reprimanded by the feds, and they have to, comply with all these suggestions, or else our grant funding is going to be, off the table. I still haven't seen a single article about that. Like, not one. Like, $122 million unaccounted for, and where's the article?
What frustrates me as an objective political commentator is that the Democrats have issues they can win on. They do. Like, there were some signs they said, save Medicaid, don't cut Medicaid. Or they've been talking about, like, save Social Security and, save these programs for people. And they're very popular issues. It was a disaster when Trump, unfortunately, cut Medicaid funding off for one day. It's a disaster when, Elon Musk goes on the Joe Rogan Experience and calls Social Security a Ponzi scheme. These are issues that Democrats can take advantage of, and yet they feel they're so distracted. It's like showing it's like showing your 5-year-old son a glow stick. And that glow stick for the Democratic Party is woke issues, because they have so much that the Republican Party has historically failed with for a lot of people. And they can use those issues to their advantage, but they don't do it because they're so tuned into these social issues, and that's what's killing the Democratic Party.
Chris, that was either your screen was tuned to just look at yourself, or you were impressive at ignoring me there. Did you see what I was holding up? Or
I did, but I have a background in theater, Collin, so
you can just skip through it. So you're okay with me saying you hate Al's beef? You're all right with that?
I don't think I've ever actually had an Al's beef sandwich.
I should just put that. That's even worse. You just ruined yourself.
What's with this you like Lou Malnati's? Like, that's like so generic. Like, oh yeah,
you're okay. You think Columbus was racist? You think all his statues should be ripped down?
I didn't even see you put that one up. I was so focused on the audience here, Collin, because that's what I am for the audience. I'm focused.
You're professional.
On you. I'm not focused on Collin Corbett's sides. I'm focused on you, the audience.
But the Democrats aren't getting this point. I mean, we talked last week about the woke language, and I hate using the term. I'm going to stop using that term because I do hate it. But the crazy far left language in Wisconsin about, they're no longer mothers, they're inseminated people. And one thing I've noticed, I don't think you guys have seen this, but just in the last week, I've noticed that they're no longer even calling them undocumented. They're calling them unauthorized immigrants. You guys see that? Like, a lot of the media reports now, the phrase they're using now is unauthorized immigrants, and I've seen it in like 3 different media outlets. This is not an accident. Wow. So this is what they keep doing here. It's the language. It's can't call them criminals anymore. You can't say mother or father. You can't say that they're non-citizens or illegal immigrants. They're just unauthorized immigrants. That's what they are now.
But that's what Trump figured out is that if you keep the language similar, you can get more people to come into the coalitions. That's what he did. He went on the podcast that went to the specific people instead of trying to use that traditional outlet. So he did the same thing. He's Trump. He's got the personality and the outreach and the funding to do that. So I mean, it works. That's why they're in such control around here. To your point, Michael, they don't have to speak the truth because they speak in volume. And so, by drowning out the truth, which with a bunch of rhetoric, it's the same thing to them because they then have the money to go and do what they want to do, and then they can change the name of bills, they can hide stuff, they can do a whole bunch of gains that allows them to continue to win the way they do.
All right, I think we've covered this topic pretty well, except Kevin hasn't spoken since I
Yeah.
said I was going to hold up signs. So I just have to hold yours up just because
Okay.
I had some fun with this one.
Yeah,
This
I
is
got
straight
it.
from Sean Caston. He
Yeah.
wanted me to put this one on there. So.
I was really excited by that. A sitting U.S. congressman doxing me on on Twitter. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if he's got that kind of time instead of knocking on doors or working his constituents, that's good for us. So keep
No
poking the
kidding.
bear.
Yeah, I will.
Not that I have to tell you that. All right, let's go to our next topic here, which is that those elections are coming up. We've talked national, let's talk local. In Illinois on April 1st, local elections are happening, and odds are in your community there is at least one, if not multiple races on the ballot, regardless of where you live in the state. There's races for you to focus on. I don't know about in Chicago, but I certainly know everywhere else. Chris can correct me on the
Not
Chicago
Chicago.
one.
No Chicago this time.
So I know they don't have races, but I don't know if they still have like ballots to vote on other things. But I guess we'll see. But there's plenty of races out there, and these races are heating up. So this is a bit of a catch-all. I know you guys are all pretty active politically in your regions. Why don't you jump in and just thoughts on any hot races that are happening in your area?
I can tell you, we take the Naperville and the local cycles very seriously. In terms of rebuilding DuPage, I think the locals are very critical to that rebuild effort. Those are far more doable to win if you're Republican. You don't have some of the headwinds that you have in November with all the Pritzker money and gerrymandered districts and controversy at the top of the ticket, and all the vote by mail stuff isn't as big of an issue. We can win these races locally, and we proved we can win even in the bluer areas. We went up and down the ballot in Naperville the last April cycle, and I think we're going to be very competitive in Naperville again. We got good candidates, and I see a lot of good things happening on the ground. So I would just say, it's people listening, we got to do well in April and take these races very seriously. The Democrats do not distinguish between April and November, and neither can we.
Well, and Kevin, that's the thing I want to harp on here is we've got a lot of really good people around the state who kind of live in the decorum of the past. And you've got J.B. Pritzker out there begging Democrats to no longer have decorum, to pack our town halls screaming, to go out to the streets and cause basically violence and do whatever it takes to win. That's his motto. That's the Democrats' motto. You see it in Illinois. I mean, they get involved in these local races. They announced it the day after the November election that they were turning their focus to these local races. Personal PAC is out there with their endorsements. I know they've endorsed a slate of 4 trustees there in Naperville, and the left is active in these local races, but we still have a group of Republicans around the state. We're kind of in that old school mentality of they're nonpartisan. We shouldn't touch them. We have to play in every election. We have to play in every race. Maybe you play a little differently. Maybe you aren't as partisan, or maybe you just focus on hard R's and you let the candidates focus on the rest of the voters. I mean, how you do it certainly matters, but you need to do it. That's the Nike thing. Just do it. You've got to get involved, because right now the left is actively involved in these local races all throughout the state of Illinois. And so if you're a conservative, if you're a Republican, you've got to be out there knocking on doors and doing the work and getting these center-right candidates elected in your community and the communities around you.
Yeah, and to your earlier point, we have multiple U.S. congressmen actively engaged in these Naperville City Council races. Bill Foster, Underwood, they're doing professional shoots with them to help bolster these local races. They're overtly partisan. So yeah, I mean, we really got to counter it and do what we can to take these races.
Yeah, absolutely. What else are you guys seeing in races in your areas?
One of the
Well,
ones down by me that's been kind of interesting is Belleville mayor race because there's two Democrats running and the incumbent supported by Mark Kern, the Democrat county. He's the county board chairman and a Democrat. And then there's the opponent is supported by Jay Hoffman. So there's been a lot of Democrat infighting down here as a result of that race. And it's going to be interesting to see who comes
I'm
out
sure
on
you hate to
top.
see that, Michael. It's so horrible to watch.
Hopefully, the sometimes honorable Jay Hoffman doesn't get his way, but we'll see.
Just pop the popcorn, let them duke it out. What else? Corey, I know you've got some races in your area there in Tazewell.
Yeah, we don't have some of the issues that further north has here in Tazewell. We're very blessed to be pretty red, but that doesn't mean we don't have a fight on our hands because with the runaway blue in this state, you can look to Peoria, you can look to McLean, our neighbors to the east and the west, and they've got a lot of contentious races that do become dog fights. And so here in Tazewell, what we're trying to do is figure out how to use that decorum that we spoke about earlier and say, okay, how do we make the process more civil? How do we make sure that we're getting those right people rising so that we can put them in the House, so we can put them in the Senate? We are fortunate. We are blessed to have Reps Howder, Tipsword and Weaver, and then Senator Turner. So, I don't discount the advantage that we have there, but, what we're focused on is getting really down into the mayoral races, the school boards. But how do you support the right candidates? Because again, it becomes, are you Republican enough? And I think that, if you focus, you said something, I took a note on it, that, if we figure out how to get the hard R's involved and let the candidates duke it out for the soft R's, the independents and some of those blue dog Democrats, I think that that's how we can take that back. And so Jim Rule and myself here in Tazewell with the executive committee, we are really trying to figure out how do we support down the ballot, because that's where the top of the ticket is going to come from in the future. We don't build a bench in Illinois very well because we rip down the infrastructure every single time. And so as the county leadership, that's what we have to figure out, is how to curtail that infighting and unify that messaging. Michael and I talked a couple times. Some of the stuff that he deals with down south is not what we deal with here, but that doesn't mean we can't find solutions that work in both regions. So unifying that message, I think, is important. And so here in Tazewell, helping the school board where I live here in Washington, Mike Brownfield has a fight on his hand with kind of a leftist movement coming in here. And so just trying to activate people so that the people who matter, the voters, are getting out and doing that. And, to Kevin's or Chris's point earlier, it's the people who are watching this. They're the ones who are going to make the difference. They're the ones who are going to get energized by something that they heard here, like I did a long time ago with you guys. And, you just keep asking questions and being involved. And so, I think that that's what it comes down to. That's what we're doing here in Tazewell County, is having that conversation within leadership to make sure that the people who need to be heard are heard, and those who need to hear it, hear it. You do that, the rest of it takes care of itself, because we are Americans, we are smart, and we can figure a lot of this stuff out for ourselves.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people misrepresent or purposely misunderstand what we're trying to accomplish with this podcast, and it's Republicans helping Republicans, conservatives helping conservatives.
Mhm.
It's what are you seeing work in your area, so someone else
Yep.
in the state can then try that. I mean, I'll tell you, we tend to do this backwards. As a Republican organization, I see these organizations all the time putting out sample ballots for the general election in an even numbered year, when frankly those sample ballots just don't really do much. And yet this local election in a odd numbered year is when sample ballots sent to every hard R in your community are massively helpful, because most of them don't know that elections are happening. They don't know which candidates lean left or lean right because they don't have the benefit of
Right.
the D on the ballot. And so, but most organizations don't do the sample ballots early on in the off year, but then they waste a bunch of money doing sample ballots for the November election when it does no good.
Yep.
So it's that kind of a thing of how can we be tactically smarter? And the Republican Party can do a lot more. Democrats 2 years ago did something where they put up online every candidate that they had researched that was had a demonstrable Democratic background. Like they made it clear to everyone for school board, for local office. If you want to know which of your candidates are Democrat, which ones are Republican, here we made it easy for you. I've
Right.
long thought Republicans should do something like that, where you wait until a few weeks before election day because you're not looking to hurt those candidates, but you let the Republican voters in that municipality or that township know, hey, in whatever community you're in, these candidates are hard Democrats, and these candidates are fiscal conservatives and center right candidates, however you want to word it. That's super helpful for the voters because most of them don't vote because they don't know
Correct.
which ones of those candidates are the better candidates.
Well, and that's what we're seeing around here. I had a local alder person come up to me. He's like, "Hey, when are the local elections?" I'm like, "Well, shouldn't you know some of that?" But he's so focused on his narrow slice of the pie that it's like, okay, if he doesn't know that, how does everybody else know that? And so that's what we want to try to figure out, is how to inform people so that the voters are making these decisions on who gets elected, not the gatekeepers, not the people who are in the know.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. All right. Any final thoughts, Chris? Maybe? No, you good?
Well, I mean, I have a race I could talk about. The bit, like, everyone knows about Orland Park, so I'm not going to talk about Orland Park here. Right next door in Tinley Park, there's another very, very hot mayoral election. One slate is being backed by State Senator Mike Hastings and State Representative Bob Rita to try and take out the incumbent mayor, Mike Glotz. Now, Glotz has had a beef with Representatives Rita and Senator Hastings for God knows how long. All of this goes back to the Tinley Park Mental Asylum property, and this has been brewing for a number of years now. Hastings and Rita are backing Mike Maloney for mayor, who also happens to be the project manager for the Tinley Park District at the mental asylum property, so not really a lot of subtlety there. But in any case, it's a very contentious race. A lot of state legislative stuff going on in Tinley Park and the Tinley Park District. A lot of money being spent. Maloney's the former president of the Pipe Fitters Union. Glotz is at 150 guys, so there's union money being thrown around on both sides. So it's a really big race. You can't drive down Oak Park Avenue without seeing 70 signs on your way down for both slates. So very interesting race, and shows that nothing in politics is monolithic. There are Democrats who go at each other. There are unions who go at each other in different races. So nothing's ever monolithic. So very interesting race to keep an eye on.
Yeah, you mentioned Orland Park. It's another big one. I mean, we haven't talked about it on the podcast. We assume people know what's going on because it is a big race. But just for those who maybe don't know, you've got Keith Peca, the incumbent, the Democrats in that, not just in the city, but people all around it have been trying to take him out for a long time. And they've gotten behind Jim Dodge, who at one point, I guess, was a Republican, but they're all behind him trying to knock out Keith Peca there in Orland Park. And that's become a big, nasty race. So another race that we're all watching pretty closely.
I wonder if Sean Caston is Jim Dodge's spell checker. Maybe that's why he hasn't had many typos.
I mean, it's Dodge. I'm sure there were typos, but somebody.
Sean will help him out.
There you go. All right, let's go to our next topic here. Let's stay on politics. We got 6 political animals on a podcast. We got to talk politics. So let's talk the Illinois U.S. Senate race. So we still don't know what Dick Durbin is or isn't going to do, but we're starting to see movement on the Republican side. There's one candidate who did announce, a guy by the name of John Goodman. Nobody really knows much about him. He's a veteran. He's putting his name out there, which certainly we appreciate. Doesn't have a lot of political background or a lot of context. So at the moment, isn't being taken as a major candidate, though maybe he'll prove us wrong. Another candidate, another person who's laying the groundwork, is being taken a little bit more seriously, Dave Nayak, simply because he's got a lot of money. He's hired a Republican-aligned firm to run his campaign. He's already put out mailings to Republican precinct committeemen. They're doing polling and putting those polls out through his consultants to try to gain some notoriety, gain some press before announcing. But their focus is on running for U.S. Senate. Nayak, if you don't know the name, Dave Nayak, he ran in the city of Chicago as a Democrat for state Senate. He has since switched parties, and that's a big part of his letter and his platform of why he switched parties. Obviously, that leads to a lot of people feeling strongly either for or against him. For me, I'm just going to wait to see, can he mount a real campaign? But we do have some movement on the Republican side in that U.S. Senate race. So it's worthy of a conversation. Who's got thoughts?
So I've been getting phone calls from people I know who also get phone calls from people who are looking into running for U.S. Senate, not just Senate, governors, Congress, and all these things. And what I always tell them, especially with U.S. Senate, is when somebody calls you and tells you they're running for U.S. Senate, ask them how they're going to raise $1 million. Just ask them how they're going to raise $1 million. Because really the price tag for running for U.S. Senate is about $50 million. That's the real number about there. But if they can't figure out a way to get to 1 million, what are we talking about here, folks? Now, obviously, we need if you're in the Republican Party, you need a competent candidate to run for U.S. Senate. Whether they're running up against Dick Durbin, whether or not they're running against Julian Stratton, or whoever else the Democratic Party is going to put up for this seat. We need a competent candidate who can get their name out there and not embarrass you on election day. That being said, this is the time of year when everybody wants to throw their hat into the ring. And the thing to always ask you, if you're a party chairman, if you're a precinct committeeman, if you're an elected official, if someone calls you and tells you to run for U.S. Senate, ask them now if they can raise $1 million. Because that's all you need. If they can't give you that answer, that's all you need to hear from them.
Yeah. I mean, especially as you pointed out, $1 million just gets you in the ball game. It does not win you the race by any means.
Yeah, it's been a curiosity to me why we've not been able to get more notable names interested in U.S. Senate. We seem to get a lot of our better known candidates really kind of focused just on governor for a number of cycles now, a number of years. We really have not had more of our notable names look at U.S. Senate for whatever reason. And if Durbin isn't running again, and assuming Pritzker doesn't run for that U.S. Senate seat, I would think a Stratton or an Underwood, those sound like beatable names to me if you're a major Republican and have some money. So I would hope we'd have people looking at that, especially if Durbin isn't running again.
Well, can I make a comment here? We talk about notable names in the Republican Party, but historically, the U.S. Senate seat usually comes down to either you're filthy rich, so you can raise the money, you're an incumbent U.S. congressman, so you can kind of just lateral the money over to a U.S. Senate race, or you're a statewide elected official or have some notoriety in the state. The Republican Party doesn't have that. Everyone wants to talk about Darren LaHood, and I think Darren LaHood would be a great candidate for any higher office he might ascribe to. I don't think Darren LaHood wants to run for U.S. Senate. I don't think he does. And there's no statewide Republican in this seat. I don't think Mike Boss wants to run for U.S. Senate. I don't think anybody here wants Mary Miller to run for U.S. Senate. So the bench we're dealing with for U.S. Senate isn't very long. And then we're just talking about state reps and state senators, which God bless them. We've got some great state reps and state senators. How are they going to raise the money? Where's this money going to come from?
So they struggle to raise money without those hard caps that you've got for the federal raise. So it's a solid point.
Right. So my point is that, I think we have some great people, but I don't think there's an infrastructure in place that actually says, there is a big name out there who could raise the money, is well known. There's half a person in Darren LaHood. He won't do it. So right now, I don't think there is a bench for U.S. Senate, to be completely honest with you.
Well, I mean, I guess we could have a conversation about that. There isn't a bench, period. But certainly to your point, it's harder for U.S. Senate. I mean, listen, I remember I had to find an email for something for a client last week, I think it was, and I was digging through old emails, and I've got them all archived so I could just search, and it pulled up an email that had Steve Sauerberg's name in it from back in 2008. I mean, I can't remember the last time we were able to recruit real candidates for some of these statewide seats. It's been a struggle. So I think, as Kevin said, if it's Stratton, if Pritzker's plan here is to stay in the governor's race and run Stratton for the Senate seat, Stratton is absolutely beatable. And so the hope is we're going to have a solid candidate come forward. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's Goodman, but he's got some work ahead of him. Maybe it's Dave Nayak. We'll see. But I'm hopeful we get some tier one recruits in that race, because I don't want to be sitting here a year before election day going, well, that race is over. We're not even making a play for it. I mean, that's what always happens for Republicans. We get to the end of filing deadline a year before election day or 11 months before election day, and we're like, well, we're not playing in all of these races over here, so we've just got 3 races we get to play in. 2026 is not guaranteed to be a bad year for Republicans. Anything could happen in politics, and I don't want to see people writing this off this early.
Well, and I think that requires the infrastructure that's been missing for quite some time. You're talking about 4 corners of Illinois that is completely different, where you're down south versus central versus, north, and then you got Collars and Cook. Until somebody figures out that jigsaw of how to connect across the 4 corners, how do we take those statewide offices? Do we have a single Republican in a statewide office? No, because it's very difficult for us to get that unified message that plays north and south, where the Democrats can just say whatever they want to. So until we figure out that infrastructure at the grassroots or that bottom level, I don't think we can tether all of it together to actually make that play. So that's where I like stuff like this, where it gets the average person to get involved. That's
And
the solution to
I think
all
that's what we're
this.
looking for. We're looking for people to get involved. We've had this conversation a lot lately, and I'm not sure when, but I'm planning on having on one of these podcasts coming up, just a big debate between conservative, moderate, establishment, and grassroots. I want to get everybody together and just let's just air it out and piss everybody off all at once. But we just need to air it out and get over this
Yep.
because, there's people who are attacking Nayak. Listen, I get it. He ran as a Democrat before. I get that. And so there's people who are attacking him, but the very people who are attacking him were also previously Democrats, and they saw the light and moved to the Republican Party. We talk about Trump obviously being the biggest example of that, but let's not discount Nayak or anybody else just because they happen to vote Democrat at some point in their lives. Now, if they hold Democratic positions today, or if they're going to do things that we disagree with, then yes, they have no place in this party. But we have to grow the party. And so looking at, somebody who, pulled the Democratic primary ballot 20 years ago, or, happened to be a Democrat before they saw the light, we're never going to be a party that wins if we don't be a party that grows. And not everybody had the opportunity to grow up with Republican parents and always vote Republican their whole lives. I have the opportunity. I have a perfect Republican record. I've always voted Republican, but I don't think that makes me better than anybody else. I just happened to have those details early. Some people come to the light later. The Reagan Democrats, that's why he won. You see Trump Democrats reaching union households and a lot of people that never voted Republican before. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. And so let's not hold other people to purity tests that we don't even hold ourselves to. Let's grow the party. And if you see the error of your ways and you see that the Democratic Party has been dragged so far to the left that they have left you and you're looking for a place,
Right.
I want you in my Republican Party. Like, that needs to be our mentality because we've got to grow this party. And as the Democrats become more and more progressive, those people who are left need a place to go. Let's welcome them into our party. All right, let's go to our next topic because this one, I'm hoping y'all are going to have some fun with this, like I plan to have some fun with this one. But there are people in the world who have no identity unless they have their names on the ballot. They must always be running for office. And even if they move out of state and go to another state, they still must run for office. And I present to you Exhibit A, Jim Oberweis, who has now officially filed the paperwork. Lane will bring the notice up on screen. He has officially filed paperwork to run in the Florida 19th Congressional District in Southwest Florida, where he lives now. He's not the only one. Catalina Lauf, former Illinois resident, is also looking at that race. Jack Lombardi, former Illinois resident, also looking at that race. These are all people who constantly have to put their names in for every position, have to run for office. I mean, Oberweis has literally been running since before I got involved in politics, and these gray hairs are real. It's been a long time, and Jim Oberweis is always on the damn ballot. The 19th district, anybody who cares or wants to know, that is Brian Donald's current district. He's vacating it to run for governor of Florida, which is why now this is an open seat. It is D plus 20 something. So it's a very, very Republican district. And Jim Oberweis is the first, at least that I've seen, but certainly the first Illinois former to put his name in. And I'll just leave my comments with this. By the time that primary comes around, Jim Oberweis will be 80 years old, just for some context here. So there's a reason why he lives in God's waiting room in Florida. And, maybe leave this race to somebody who has a little bit longer of a runway to hold the seat. Just my thought.
Collin, you threw me off there after the God's waiting room comment. My goodness. But here's the thing, Jim Oberweis had an elected position. He was a state senator, was he not? So if Jim Oberweis wanted such an elected position, he could have just stayed state senator, and he had a pretty solid Republican seat by my recollection. He wasn't going to lose, so he could have been an elected official. He could have went down to Springfield. But the problem with these people is that it's never good enough. And now I'm waiting for Bob Fioretti to move down to Florida and announce his run for the 19th Congressional District of Illinois, because we have so many of these people who just run for every office. And you know what? Why not give somebody else a shot? Jim Oberweis, you're a millionaire. You make good ice cream, man. Why don't you
does he anymore? I mean, they filed for bankruptcy last year, so does
the
he?
Oberweis by my house is still up and running, so as long as that's the case, I'm assuming Oberweis is still in business. But in any case, Jim Oberweis, you make decent ice cream. maybe let somebody else have a shot. That somebody else isn't Catalina Lauf, by the way. It's not Bob Fioretti. It's not Jack Lombardi. It's none of these people. If you're from Illinois, you shouldn't be moving down to Florida to run for public office after you got there 6 months ago. People who represent districts should live there for a decent amount of time. They should have experience with the constituents. They should know people in the area. You shouldn't just be able to get on a plane and move into a different state just so you can have your nice, cushy DC job. Come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, Illinois, we talk tariffs. Illinois' #1 export is bad politicians. We should find some way to tariff that.
Yeah, I laugh because there's so many people from Naperville that have moved down to Florida to get to a better political environment. You get down there and you got the same names running for your congressman. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not a fan of that either, Chris. And I've had people mention to me, you like politics, why don't you just move to better territory? And like, well, what fun is that? I know people who've done that and moved to deep red areas. I mean, you don't even have to campaign in some of these places.
Yeah.
What's the fun there? I
Yeah.
think we want to take on these battles and fix our home and not just, take off for easier territory. So I'm with you, Chris.
It's like playing an Xbox game and you can't beat it, so you put it on rookie mode or the easy mode, so you can win. You could play Madden and win 100-3 because that feels better, I guess.
The problem is,
Totally.
Colin, is that none of these people win when they do this. Has there ever been a success story where somebody?
Gillicorn was, I think he won one race in Arizona.
Bobby Schilling, right, over in Iowa.
He lost in Iowa, though. He didn't win.
Oh, he never won? I thought he represented Congress in both states.
No, he lost.
No, he lost.
Yeah, it's very rare that they win, Chris.
Yeah, that's my point. It's like you move to a deep red state because nobody wanted you in Illinois.
Well, but that's the point, Chris. We're not. These aren't people who were rock stars in Illinois, left, and then they, ran a race. They couldn't win in Illinois. There were reasons why they couldn't win in Illinois. I mean, Oberweis ran for office after office after office. And while I've said on these podcasts, I believe I've said it, he's one of the nicest people out there. I've got a number of Jim Oberweis stories that show what a great human being he is, but he's not a great campaigner. And to win for office, you got to be a good campaigner. And Jim has just never been that. All right, we had our fun. Anybody else have any jokes? I think I'll get some letters for some of my comments, that's for sure. All right, let's move on to our next one here. We're out of politics now. We're going to cover policy just briefly, but we got to talk about this. So we've been saying since J.B. Pritzker had his budget address, where he magically found money under the couch cushions, where it was going to be a $3.2 billion deficit, but then magically Pritzker was able to find some money here and find some money there, and now it's just a little deficit, and we can close that, but with some budget gimmicks, it's not a problem. A lot of us have been saying two things. One, that was never true, and two, there was a strategy behind it. The whole strategy was he wants to make it Trump's fault that he has to raise taxes, Trump's fault that he has to cut spending. And so this was all a game. The problem is that game seems to be up, that the Kafka has come out with their projections, and it's clear that there's still going to be what's about a $1.2 billion deficit here that Pritzker's not accounting for in his budget. So he's not going to be able to play that game where he blames this all on Trump and says it's all the Republicans' fault. But as a lot of people predicted, which of course we were called doom grifters and whatever else we were called, that Pritzker likes to use his fake numbers here to make it seem like it's a balanced budget. Well, he was caught with his hand in the cookie jar. I'm sure he will find some way to skirt responsibility and blame it on somebody else. But the reality is that this budget is absolutely not balanced. Even people like Rich Miller and Cat Fax are pointing that out, that this is not balanced, and they're going to have to do something. The question will be what? Are far left Democrats willing to cut their pet projects? Probably not. Are moderate Democrats willing to raise taxes? Probably not. They're going to have a huge fight here going into May, and you know what? They created this problem. They're going to have to find a way to figure out how to fix it. What do you guys think here?
I mean, I think just to cut to it, I get asked why did I have interest in being the DuPage County GOP chairman? I think is in part because I view their party as a house of cards on the other side. I really do. And I think you're going to see this kind of ridiculous kind of leading down there. And I think you're not going to see them agree to cut on anything. You're going to have a complete circus on this issue and every other. And I think those issues down there are only going to get worse whenever Pritzker moves on. I think there's going to be opportunity for us here politically because they're not going to fix it. They're going to punt it. It'll be games and gimmicks. So they're not going to do the heavy lifting to fix that budget no matter what.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, that we're talking about the current budget, but this doesn't account for the transit issues and the funding they need there. This doesn't account for any programs that are going to be passed because Democrats can't be in Springfield without passing more programs that cost more taxpayer dollars. Like this is just where it stands today. It's going to be worse.
Agreed.
I think a couple things that stood out to me. So I want to pass it over to you, Patrick, because your opponent has voted for a lot of these budgets, has voted for a lot of the spending over the years, and we've talked about it. How much, over $1 billion, what 1.6 billion spent on non-citizens. I mean, these are all certainly things that voters aren't on board with, and these Democrats have been lockstep in voting for all these budgets.
Oh yeah, I mean, we can all talk about the same thing. There is no solution to this budget issue when you keep on losing all of our tax base. I mean, with all this regulation and these rules and the laws that they keep on passing, nobody's sticking around here. All of our good money is actually leaving here. Our businesses aren't reinvesting. The crime's out of control. Our education system is failing, and all of this is going to keep on coming in. We're never going to be able to balance a budget with the way that we're currently running things. So, I mean, we can talk about this all day, and I firmly believe that the only thing we can actually do is we're going to start vote. We, as Republicans, have to start coming out and truly getting to every single door and showing them the real errors of the Democrat policies. And that's where we have truly lacked at, is just kind of just sat on our hands a lot of times. And down here locally, we've been more blessed than what, of course, north of 80 up there, it's a little bit tougher on you guys up there. But down here, we have been starting to swing a lot of, turning a lot of seats over. So I feel fortunate that I'm in a good position here in the 36th district, that this is a winnable seat, because I can point out all the errors of Mike Halpin. So I do feel like we can definitely pick this up. But I mean, this is one just a budget issue for us down here. It's more so along the lines of safety. When you're talking about the Safety Act and the Trust Act and the education system and all this stuff that's going on right now, we definitely are in a different direction here than what we're talking about up there where you guys are at.
Okay. When Chapin Rose had a great quote, Senate Democrats are really hyper-focused on this, and they're doing a good job. And Chapin Rose came out and said that we've been saying this all along. Every year, the governor tells us he's passed another balanced budget, only to find out the next year how upside down his spending plan really was. Kudos to Rose. That was a good quote. And it's true. I mean, we keep seeing this over and over, and the chicken's coming home to roost here for Pritzker and the Democrats. Question's going to be, what are they going to do about it? Also,
Well,
just because oh, go ahead, Corey.
No, I was just going to say that part of the last few years have been, kind of covered by the COVID money. A lot of people who look at the budget, they don't get into it and understand the sourcing of where some of this money comes from. So, again, them having control of the media and the narrative and the messaging and all of that, they're able to hide this stuff, the budget parlor tricks and stuff like that. But the budget's raised 16 billion since he's taken over, and the businesses leaving, the tax base leaving. Like it's very frustrating that it's being fed to us that this is balanced. But that's the problem with the socialist approach to this, is that the bill always comes due, and it's just convenient that he gets to pull the ejection cord if he wants to, and either run for the Senate or go run for the presidency in 2028. So that falls on us to make sure that we're getting this information out there so that people understand why, driving across the border to Kentucky, your gas is going to drop by 75 cents to $1. As a single dad of 3 teenagers, 2 of which are in driving range, that adds up real quickly just to live my normal life. And so we just have to get more people to understand where our money's going and that it belongs in our pockets. So,
yeah, I like that. I'm a political animal, so just something I noticed that only our viewers are going to care about. But I've mentioned this a few times in previous episodes, how as the governor's high-level staff has left, because we've given him kudos. He's had a really good staff. That's part of why he's been successful. A lot of his communications staff has left. And if you look at some of the back and forth where the Senate Republicans attacked Pritzker, you'll see this if you go to Capitol Facts a few days ago. And then Pritzker's office responded, his spokesperson or one of his spokespeople responded. And you look at that quote, it's awful. It's really bad. I mean, I don't think I've seen such a poorly constructed response from the governor's office in a very long time, which I take as great news. I mean, if Pritzker does run again, the good news is a lot of his high-level staff has left that office. He's not going to run as successful of a campaign, and you just see it in some of this back and forth where Senate Republicans are beating him on this issue, and a big reason why is his staff struggling to message it and struggling to respond. So just something to point out for our people, some hope on our side here.
Great.
All right, let's go to our next topic on the agenda. So I want to give kudos to the House Republicans. They've unveiled what they call their Relief for Working Families legislative package, and it just makes me smile. It makes me so happy. It's a number of bills on a number of different topics, all focused on giving what they like to say is relief for working families. I wish they'd just come straight out and say it and say, we're going to lower your costs, but you know what? Beggars can't be choosers. I'm really happy they're in this space, so I'm not going to complain. And you see all these bills. You've got Brad Stevens with some bills in here. You've got Kyle Moore, who's been on. Ryan Spain's in here with some bills. You've got Jed Davis. Mike Coffey's got some bills here. It's all about helping workers, helping people who need assistance to afford their education, to find a job in the trades, helping small businesses. Let me just give the website where the Republicans list this. It's on there. It's called thecaucusblog.com. Again, that's thecaucusblog.com. If you want to see a lot of what these bills are, there's a bunch of them. There's a lot of really good stuff here. I don't want to get stuck necessarily in the nitty gritty. I just want to focus on how awesome it is to see Republicans down in Springfield pushing forward legislation that's going to help working families, that's going to lower their costs. This is absolutely the space we need to be in, and something we've been screaming about, we as in a lot of us Republicans, including some of you, over the years. Republicans had been stuck under some of our previous leaders. They had been beaten down so much that they kind of stopped putting in legislation. They just sort of focused on, let's just defeat some of the bad bills, because anytime Republicans try to push anything, it doesn't go anywhere. Democrats stop it. Will any of these bills see the light of day? It's probably unlikely, because Democrats are so partisan. Even if a Republican has a good idea, they won't let it see the light of day. But after years and years and years of that, Republicans just stop putting in good bills. And I love to see over the last couple of years, we've seen more of this. We've seen like the manufacturers put in really good pro-manufacturing bills. We've seen the chamber and they've put in some good pro-business bills. And now we're seeing Republicans put in some great bills that are going to help working families, help small businesses. I want to see more and more of this. I love that we're seeing it. This is what Republicans need to do. Show that we can lead, show that we can care, or that we do care. Yeah, Democrats are going to kill all these bills. That's what they do. But keep doing the work. Keep showing voters that under Republican leadership, things could be better. So kudos to their House Republicans for this. I love what they're doing here.
Well, I think it's a good way to draw a contrast. You have a list of, here are the bills that Republicans are filing, and then you compare that to the list of bills some of these Democrats are filing. Obviously, we have people's best interest at heart, and Democrats are, pandering to all these marginal groups and trying to get a press release or get on MSNBC.
Yeah.
I like it because it keeps building up the inroads we've made with blue collar working class families, union households. I mean, that's our base now. I mean, politics have changed so much that working class families, if you're in a blue collar neighborhood, I feel like it's a good chance that's a Republican neighborhood. And that's changed a lot, over the years. So I really like it on the political end as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's good policy and good politics, and that just makes me smile a lot.
Well, I was down at the regional chairman's meeting in Springfield. Michael Butler was there last Thursday, and Senate Minority Leader Curran and House Minority Leader McCombie were there, and that's what they were talking about. Is that the reality is that we don't have the numbers to actually do what needs to be done, but instead of taking that defeatist attitude, it's giving the people like us, the people who want to know what to do, giving us ammunition to go out and say, hey, like this is what we want to do, instead of just spending all of that time defeating. So I was very pleased to hear Tony talking about, giving us something at the county level to actually give to people to get them pissed off enough to be productive and vote our way. So
yeah. Well, and I think what Republicans need to do, which we haven't done in the past, but we've got to play this game like the Democrats do, which it's to them all art war. I love Pritzker going around saying that Democrats live by a decorum and that Republicans don't hold them to. And I'm like, what world are you living in? Like, it's the other way around, actually, especially in Illinois, where Democrats will do and say anything to get elected, including Pritzker. Republicans need to take a lesson from their playbook, which is when Democrats kill these bills, we need to make them pay for it. We need to make every vulnerable Democrat, I don't care if they're on the committee or not. You need to ask Suzanne Ness. You need to ask Amy Murray Briel. You need to ask, blanking out by you.
Katie Stewart.
What's that? Oh,
Katie
by you, Michael,
Stewart.
ask Katie Stewart. By you, Kevin, I'm blanking on who just won that House seat on the east side of the county. God, it's going to come to me.
Lori Deuter?
Yeah. Marty Deuter. Ask Marty Deuter. I don't care if they're on these committees. You ask them, you know what? Do you agree that Democrats, with your fellow Democrats, that this bill shouldn't see the light of day? Press releases, hammer them on it, and then put out text messages and digital ads in their communities saying, Amy Murray Briel stands with the Democrats who don't want to give you a tax deduction on your education, who don't want to give you relief if you're a small business owner, who don't want to give you tax cuts, who don't want to lower your energy costs. Like, it doesn't matter that they did or didn't vote for this. What matters is they didn't speak out. They didn't go and sponsor these bills. Hold them accountable for that. Those guerrilla tactics that Democrats are really dang good at that we don't tend to deploy, we need to start to do it. But we're always like, well, your Briel's not on that committee, so we can't blame her. Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can. She didn't sponsor the bill. She didn't put out a press release saying she supports that bill. She didn't go to her leader and say, well, I believe this bill should be on the floor. Hold them accountable for being against pro working family legislation, pro small business legislation. Hold them all accountable for it in these targeted races.
And you brought up earlier, Collin, social media. I can tell you when I've posted like those little bill summaries, like these ILGA summaries of one of their crazy bills that get filed, how viable the bill is, who knows, but the fact that it's filed is
Not our
often
problem.
shocking. I'll tell you, the media or social media engagement on those is often through the moon. I mean, it's really a cheap way of getting hits. We're to your word, guerrilla. That's definitely a good word for us because we're working with a tight money right now. Social media is something we got to use more. And I can tell you, when I posted those things, they tend to go crazy.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this is where we talk about how it's great to see Republicans coming together in the House, where you've got people in that Freedom Caucus. I know people are like, wow, Freedom Caucus, blah, blah, blah. I take flack for defending them, and then I take flack from conservatives for not being one of them, and so everyone just hates me. But one of the things the Freedom Caucus does well is they're great at social media, and we should learn from that. As you said, Kevin, these crazy bills, there's a reason why Michael and Chris and I and our team do all this work digging through the bills and reading every news source we can find so we can equip you, so you can use that. Go on social media, post it, put it in an email, a blast email where you're raising money. Say, so-and-so crazy Chicago Democrat wants to do X. Give me $5, give us $10, give us $20 to fight it. That's why we do that work, is to equip you. And Kevin calls it cheap likes, and it is. But guess what? In social media, likes are likes, retweets are retweets, and this raises your score on the algorithm. So now voters are going to see your stuff more. It's good, smart strategy, is what it is. Take advantage of it. That's why we do this work. That's why we have the podcast.
Well, it's that guerrilla warfare approach. My background is I sit underneath my warship Tarawa that I was on board. Like, that's what we need to do. And that's what I'm excited about Patrick Harlan over there in Knox County, what the Harlan brothers are doing is that, they're taking the fight where it needs to be. If we can figure out how to have that unified message, and that's where I like Mark Hurley, a retired Air Force colonel who's doing a lot of trying to figure out how to get messaging throughout the entire state. Because when you come from the military, you're only as good as the intel that you have. The person at the top has to get that message clear and concise to the person who's actually going to carry it out at the bottom of the chain of command. And I think that if we can figure out how to do that here in Illinois, that's really the solution to this. It's boots on the ground. It's doing this stuff. It's the podcast. It's the guerrilla warfare style, because we can't go toe to toe with their money. You just can't do it right now. So,
yep. Yeah, it's absolutely true. All right, let's go to our next topic. This one will probably be a little bit of a quickie, but we got to cover it simply because it's been in the news the last few weeks. Democrats have been, I just word it, poking the homeschoolers bare, meaning they do this every handful of years. I remember when I first started in politics, one of the guys who was training me was like, you guys for your campaign should really go engage the homeschoolers. And I was like, why would we do that? It just mentally didn't seem like that big of a group. But I listened because I know I have a lot to learn, and I still have a lot to learn. And so we went, and it turns out they were even back then, almost 20 years ago, some of the most politically active people. They were some of the hardest workers. They were super active. I learned very early on, number one, don't piss off the homeschoolers. And number two, if you want a solid group that's going to work hard for your candidates, there's like the bikers, like a bait, there's homeschoolers, there's some of these niche groups that you wouldn't immediately assume if you're new to politics or new to Illinois politics that are just rock star political groups. And the homeschoolers are one of those. And so every once in a while, Democrats forget and someone files a bill and they push something through. And this time it's House Bill 2827, if you want to follow that along, called the Homeschool Act, which would give local schools and give the state more control over if you want to give your kids, if you want to homeschool your children, you'd basically have to have their permission in essence. And of course, homeschoolers are freaking out and they're rallying against this bill, and I wouldn't bet against them. There's a lot of power in Springfield left of center, especially with some of those teachers union groups, but I never bet against the homeschoolers, man. These guys can make some noise, and you're going to see this fight going towards May. And the reason why I want to bring this up is it's not necessarily about the legislation. It's about if you're running a political organization or you're running a campaign, you need to be engaged on this issue because your homeschoolers in your region and your district and your county or your township, they are super politically active. Be with them now in this fight so that they're going to be with you in your fight in 2026. This is a great group of potential volunteers. Go build those relationships now because they're hot. This is an issue they're going to be focused on for the next 2 months or 3 months. Be involved with them on this issue.
This is what I'm really passionate about, Collin. I mean, I really love what Wake Illinois has been doing for the state of Illinois. I'm a hardcore supporter of homeschool, school choice. You know, I mean, some of the greatest people that I've actually seen academically excel have come from homeschool. You know, so I mean, our public education has been totally failing our students coming out. So this is actually this is like one of my greatest passions is about the homeschool and school choice. And you're right, they are very passionate people because they love, you know, they love their children, and so does everybody else that goes to school, of course. But these people are really committed to true education, not indoctrination, and they firmly put God above everything else. Like these people are really committed, and they will work extremely hard in every campaign and everything in your life. I mean, they'll be there for, you know, whether it be financially or just a friend. I mean, they're committed to you once you actually show them that you truly care what they are doing. So yes, I stand beside that homeschool.
I think it's you mentioned there are certainly a large portion of them who are religious, and that's part of the reason why they do this. There are some who aren't. I mean, ultimately, this is a parents' rights issue more than it's anything else. You have a right to educate your children, and that's a big part of it. Listen, education is one of my biggest issues. I've taken some flack for it. I am very involved in education in the state, and I'm not reflexively anti-union. I work with a lot of school districts. I'm not ashamed of it. But the reality is it's the parents who have the right. I'm listening to my cute little almost 1-year-old upstairs, and it's our responsibility. It's our right to raise him and to make sure he's educated. It's not the state's right. Government doesn't own him. They don't get to decide what he learns or what he doesn't learn. I appreciate their help, and we're certainly going to take advantage of the educational opportunities for our child, but we as his parents, it's our responsibility. And this comes down to a parental rights issue more than it's anything else. And we saw, I mean, Kevin, you saw this huge or bigly, you saw this in DuPage, and we've seen it all throughout the suburbs, that even in more blue areas during COVID and other times when parents got whipped up. They weren't all conservatives, they weren't all Republicans, but they got whipped up when you started to tell them that they weren't responsible. They didn't have a right to know what their kids were learning. And so if this is played right, you can play it more than just a homeschool issue, more than just a religious issue. This is a parental rights issue if you do it right.
Yeah, totally agree. It showcases a lot of hypocrisy too, because it doesn't cease to amaze me. Some of these Democrat officials and their activists and whatnot, how many of them really push this government-run school, support the public schools at all costs and have carte blanche over your kids. They themselves almost inevitably have their own kids in private schools. Mm-hmm. They preach it for everybody else, but often they don't want it for their own kids. So they just gotta stay away.
Yeah. Kudos to Travis Weaver, Brandon Schweizer, and Reagan Deering and the House Republicans. They did a press conference this week pushing on this, along with some homeschool students. I always want to be constructive, so I do want to point one thing out. Their messaging was more about protecting homeschool freedom, which is okay as language, but I'd really encourage the Republicans focus on parental rights here. It's protecting the rights of all parents. That's what you're doing here. This is more than just a homeschool issue. So kudos to those three for leading on this. I would just constructively offer, try to make this more about parental rights, and now you can reach all your voters on this hot button issue. All right, Let's quickly talk Chicago. This is our last one here. We can talk about it quickly. I never like letting Chris talk Chicago, but you know what? Chicago Teachers Union is in the news. It's been in the news. If you've been living under a rock and you're not aware, CTU, CPS, they continue to duke it out over their contract. And if you didn't know this, there are certain steps that the teachers union must take before they're allowed to strike. And as a matter of fact, though they're going to reach those milestones on Friday, the day we release this podcast, they will finally be allowed to actually strike. There hasn't been word yet if they will. They haven't said that they will. They haven't put out a vote yet that they will. But for those, I've had some people ask me, why haven't they striked? It's because they couldn't. Tomorrow, or when you guys watch this Friday, is the first day they're even allowed to have a strike. So let's see where this goes from here. But you're seeing this fight ramp up even more and even more. It's getting nasty. It already was nasty. Chris, with all Chicago things, I like to start with you. What do you see in here and what do you project is going to happen?
I think that Johnson's going to find a way to make sure they don't go on strike. Listen, because Johnson is in the CTU's pocket. We all know this. He's still on their payroll, at least unofficially in some regard. He's on a piece of paperwork somewhere working for the CTU still, and it's a problem. I don't think Brandon Johnson's going to let them strike. And if they do strike, he's going to be right there on a picket line with them, putting more pressure on the school board, which didn't he just completely take over the school board a couple months ago? Wasn't that a whole thing? But he did. We just had an election, so that's part of the reason why this is a problem. In any case, I would expect they're going to try and find a way to remedy this beforehand. And if not, expect to see Brandon Johnson holding a picket sign in his hand, because this is just the type of world that we live in now in the city of Chicago. But yeah.
Good world.
That's why.
And it just broke again today. We recorded these on Thursday. It just broke a few hours ago. The city has denied the school board's push to pay the pension bill, and so these budget problems on both sides just seem to be growing exponentially. But the problem is for CTU is their arguments. They're struggling with their arguments. I mean, the Civic Federation came out this week, and kudos to Capital Facts for posting it, because this is not a convenient argument for their side of the aisle here. But Civic Federation came out and pointed out they've got a ton of underutilized schools. Or barely utilized schools, and how expensive it is to educate kids in those schools. When you look at elementary level, it's $5,000 more expensive to educate kids in those underutilized schools. And when it comes to the high school level, it's almost double. It's 18 to 30,000 is the difference. And so it's just CTU struggling here with the messaging with these arguments, where every week there's another story about how they are struggling. They aren't succeeding. I mean, listen, I said it before. We've got a lot of great school districts in the suburbs and outside of Chicago, but even they look at Chicago and go, "Yeah, please stop it," because it makes all the different school districts look bad. And CTU just continues to do this, and CPS as well, to be honest.
I guess I would. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
And then they wonder why their approval ratings in the tubes. I mean, it's not as bad as Brandon Johnson's is right now, but the CTU has never been more unpopular in the history of the city, except for right now. So, I think the CTU, they'll never do this, but if they were smart, they would rebrand themselves a little bit and get back a little bit more to their popularity. I remember 10 years ago, with Rahm Emanuel, where, upsetting the teachers union was a political bad thing. It was a detriment to you if you upset the teachers union. I mean, part of the reason why the city of Chicago is in such dire financial straits right now goes back to Richard M. Daley, which he never wanted a teacher strike, so he just routinely gave them everything they wanted year after year, just so, hey, I don't want to strike. That's bad for me politically. He was going to win anyway, but Daley never wanted a headache, so he kept giving them everything they want. And Rahm was really the first mayor who really stood up to them. Lori Lightfoot, to her credit, stood up to the teachers union. That was probably one of the best things about Lori Lightfoot, looking back on everything, is she actually had the cojones to take them on. And now we got Johnson in there, and he's got no idea what he's doing, and he's in their pocket. And it's just going to be more capitulation when the city's dead broke, and we're taking out $2 billion loans to pay off $830 million. So this is a problem that's going to maintain itself until we get somebody in the mayor's office willing to say no more for the teachers.
All right, let's move to what we call our news you can use segment. We don't got a bunch this week, but this segment, this section of our podcast is all to equip our viewers, our listeners with things you need to be aware of, sometimes good stuff, but usually bad stuff, things you can use to contrast Republicans and conservatives with the far left Democratic Party and progressives in the state. So I go through it pretty quickly. Any of our guests or our participants, if they've got thoughts, they jump in quickly at the end of each one. But again, we go through this fast just to get you guys the information that you need to know. First thing I want to highlight here is there are exact bills in both the House and the Senate. House Bill 3779 and Senate Bill 2473. That's Ann Williams, Lisa Davis, and Ann Stavro Murray in the House, and Bill Cunningham and Laura Fine, all Democrats in the Senate. These bills will increase energy costs, and we need to be talking more about energy costs. This is a huge killer for working families. It's a massive killer, especially for manufacturers in the state, which was one of our strongest industries for the GDP of this state. And we don't talk enough about energy costs. It's amazing if you read what's in these bills and you read what people are talking about it. They say because there's going to be a spike in costs, because costs are going to be going up, we need to do this. And what is this? If you look at the bills, it's raising energy efficiency targets. It's increasing the amount utility companies have to spend on their efficiency programs for low-income users. It's allowing them to charge more during high use times. It's every piece of this. If you read it, you go, okay, that's going to raise rates. 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 And oh, by the way, it's also going to require that every AI company, all these data centers that Pritzker is trying to bring to Illinois to actually create a few jobs in this state, this bill will also require them to be 100% on renewable energy that they provide, by the way. They have to pay to provide it. So I'd love to know how Pritzker feels about this, because that's one of the few areas that he's seen at least a small amount of success in bringing businesses to Illinois, as the rest of the businesses who don't get these handouts all go running away. And now Democrats in Springfield want to make their energy costs significantly higher. So this is something Republicans need to be talking about, that Democrats are actively, and have been for years, actively working to raise your energy costs if you're in this state. That's something we need to talk about, because that's a big part of the cost of living. Anybody have any quick thoughts on that? At minimum, it gives me a chance to catch my breath.
You lost me at Stavro Murray.
Yeah. It's always when we're looking at these bills, I first look at the sponsors, because if it's got certain names in there, I'm like, okay, this one's probably going to be pretty bad. Let's look at the next bill here. Senate Bill 2164. This one is a bill that seems good on paper. We've talked about this a lot in these podcasts, about how these politicians down in Springfield write these bills that sound good. This bill is supposedly, it's in place. It's called the Wage Payment and Collection Act. Its stated purpose is to help those who have unpaid wages or penalties or damages, help them collect those. It sounds good on its face, which is why, by the way, some Republicans in the Senate on that labor committee had to vote for it in committee, because it'd be on a mail piece, it'd be in a TV ad if they didn't. But here's the reality of the bill. The actual purpose of this bill is to raise the fines, raise the fees, raise the penalties, raise the damages, so the Department of Labor can charge even more money to businesses in this state. And what business owners will tell you, you don't realize, if you've not dealt with the state of Illinois, you don't know this. In the state of Illinois, even if you provide facts and data to back up your position, to show you're on the right side of that as a business owner, they will still side on the side or find on the side of that current or former employee. Every time. They are not there to be fair and balanced. They tell you, if you don't like it, take it to court and fight it in court. That's what they tell you. They will find against you, because they're banking on the fact that it'll be more expensive for you to go to court and fight it than it would be just to pay them off and move on with your life, which is what most businesses tend to do. And so this is a huge driver of the cost of living in the state. It's a handout to the Trial Lawyers Association and the Department of Labor. And here's the thing. They are so backed up that most of these cases take a year or two to even resolve. And so you're sitting there as the business waiting for a couple years, and then when they find against you, you have to pay interest for that entire time. And if this bill passes, even more interest, even though it wasn't your fault. It took years for them to figure this out and make a finding. The whole situation is ridiculous, and that's why this bill looks good on paper the way it's written, but the reality is it will raise fees even more on the small businesses of the state who can't afford to just pay them off and pay off the Department of Labor every time. Big businesses, they don't care. They just write this off. Doesn't matter to them. But small to mid-sized manufacturers, small to mid-sized retail, any sort of business in this state who doesn't have that kind of a budget, this bill is going to hit them right in their pocketbook. And that's why the Illinois Chamber opposes it, and it's why Republicans should be talking about it. It's yet another situation where Democrats in the state are raising the cost of doing business, which hurts workers, it hurts small business owners, it hurts entrepreneurs. All right. Last one, I think. Yes, last one here. Just something you all need to be aware of as our viewers, as our listeners. Illinois is about to set a record, and it's not a good one. The 2023, it's called the ACFR. It's the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report for 2023. We still haven't filed it as the state of Illinois. We have now passed 600 days that we are overdue on that report, and the record held by California for their 2021 audit is 631 days. And so we are just a few weeks away from Illinois setting this record. And my simple point on this one is, of course, because as J.B. Pritzker focuses on his national political ambitions, we see reports every week about some division, some department, some inadequacy within the J.B. Pritzker administration where they're just not doing the job of governing in this state. And you can't blame this on Ronner. You can't blame this on anybody else. This is yet another example, one of hundreds, to be honest, of J.B. Pritzker's administration failing at their basic duties. As a matter of fact, the Auditor General of Illinois, back on March 1st of 2024, said, this is a problem. We don't have what we need to fulfill these reports. We should do something about it. And here we are almost, well, now officially over a year later, Pritzker never did anything about it. And so here we are, we're going to break a record because we still haven't filed the damn report. I know it's small potatoes, but every week it's another example of the failures of this administration.
I think the political consequence of something like this is also relevant to discuss. Pritzker wants to run for president. How in the world does he do that with all of these things out there? I just, if he does run, and I know there's speculation whether or not he runs for governor again or not, but I just don't know how you are a viable presidential candidate, no matter how much money you got with this kind of track record.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's close down with, as always, we have some fun. Our OG and clowns of the week. OG, original gangsta. If you're not, up with the hip. I know words like drip. I'm 1% on board with the current lingo. And then obviously clown. I don't have to explain to you what clown means. Anybody you guys want to nominate here, you can do multiple if you'd like for praise or scorn. Go for it.
I got a couple for OG if I could. Jim Mendrick, I'm impressed that he announced for governor. I think it's an interesting kind of a different option to have a sheriff possibly be a nominee. We'll see how it goes. But I've known Jim a long time. He does a great job. I'm intrigued by that candidacy. For clown, I was going to say Sean Casten, but that goes without saying. I think I'm going to give it to the entirety of the Democrats on the DuPage County Board for how they handled the Henry Hyde thing and just the public dismissive treatment of the public who were there. I've been in politics a long time, was a councilman for a long time. They did this Henry Hyde thing with no public involvement. They shut down public comment at the meeting. Just a complete circus and really clumsy, governing, I think, there by that body. So I would just say I was remarkably unimpressed with how they conducted themselves throughout that.
Yeah, and you know what? We've always just had, I don't know, some level of respect for the other side as we have these political fights. But this is a new low for DuPage Democrats. And, what do they expect is going to happen? And then Republicans are going to retaliate. This is going to keep being this race to the bottom, all because they didn't like Henry Hyde's position on one issue. You have to throw out his entire career serving the public and serving the people of DuPage County. And this is just where our politics is at right now.
Yeah.
What else you guys got?
Like I alluded to earlier.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was just going to give a shout out to Rhonda Belford, the chairman of the Chairman's Association, being able to be in that room Thursday night and hear directly from Tony and John about what's going on, be in the room with leaders in our region. I think that is what is needed more. That way we can come together on some of these things. And so I've gotten to know Rhonda over the year from her positions, and I really like her approach to this stuff. And so I appreciated her kind of wrangling a lot of those personalities into the same room. And so shout out to her.
Nice.
I was gonna say OG of the week. Got to give it to Mike Boss for presiding over the censure of Congressman Al Green. That was great to see. And then on Clown of the Week, Nicole Wallace from MSNBC. She had just reprehensible comments about President Trump honoring DJ, the young African American kid that with cancer that wants to be a law enforcement officer. I thought those comments were just terrible, and I'm just embarrassed on her behalf. I mean, it was bad. Also, Janulius, the Secretary of State's office, we just went through this voting period on the Illinois state flag, and well, we're thinking about changing it. And overwhelmingly, Illinoisans said, "Hey, we want to stick with what we've got." So they just wasted everybody's time and our tax dollars to go
that's
through
on
that
Democrats in the
process.
legislature. I mean, Janulius didn't initiate this as much as I'd love to
Sure.
whack Alexei, but it's on Democrats in Springfield who wasted all of our time on this.
Yeah, he just coordinated it all.
Now, listen, I'll take any time you want to whack Alexei, but I got to also be a little fair too.
All right.
What else you guys got? Chris, you got nothing, man?
I mean, it's been a long week, Colin. All of my clowns of the week are either our clients for calling me too much or our opponents for doing stupid things. All my OGs are people that nobody would ever understand. The clown of the week is Al Green, disrupting the not State of the Union. And the OG of the week is the viewers of this fine podcast. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for that incredible effort you put in, Chris. All right, let me give a couple here. OGs, I want to talk about a few Republicans who put forward legislation again that shows that Republicans care and that we want to make a difference. First one here is C.D. Davidsmeyer put forward a bill. I don't know if I have the bill number. That's a fail by me. I'm sorry, guys, but put forward a bill to prevent gun violence in schools. You never see Republicans do this, but we always talk about that the biggest supporters of keeping guns out of the hands of those who want to do evil with those guns are law-abiding gun owners. And I always encourage Republicans, go put some bills down in Springfield, go show that we actually do want to make a difference on this, because all the time when there's a shooting in a school, it's Republicans say thoughts and prayers and Democrats have a bill. And the voters are like, well, they actually have something, they're doing something, so I guess I back this. But there was a bullying incident in his district where a student threatened another kid with the gun, and they never reported it to the principal. This bill would make it a requirement that it be reported to the principal, and then that the principal contact the parents and make them aware of this. Seems like common sense, and it's not impeding on anybody's Second Amendment rights. Republicans should do more of this. Kudos to Davidsmeyer for that. I love to see that. Jed Davis, another batch of bills here he's put in, focused on improving teacher recruitment in Illinois. So yet again, Jed, keep it up. Love what you're doing, buddy. Good work. My clowns of the week. This one's actually a balance. It's half OG, half clown. I don't know what's in the water this week, but I got to yet again give kudos to Capital Facts because they posted something that was actually a little bit negative on JB Pritzker. And so I want to give support when that happens. And the what he posted was asking if this is a fair hit. There was a tweet this week that attacked JB Pritzker because he was talking about protecting Medicaid federally, and yet in his own budget, he's, as he said in the tweet, dismantling a healthcare program for undocumented communities, which is a very fair hit. And the reality here, the clown of the week here, is the Pritzker side of this, where constantly attacking those federal policies where when they say, listen, we just don't have the money to do these things, like let's say cuts in Medicaid, where we say we need to cut those people who could be out working so we can reserve the funds for the truly needy. Pritzker attacks that. But then in his own budget, it's okay to say, listen, we just can't afford this because they could go get work elsewhere, which is literally what he said. The speaking out of both sides of his mouth. We're going to talk about that more in future episodes. But clown of the week for Pritzker there, but OG for Rich Miller for actually posting it. A couple more clowns here. This one was interesting. I was reading this in from Winnebago County. So there's this story about how out of Rockford, the Winnebago County Juvenile Detention Center has earned federal accreditation. I said it right eventually, because they passed an audit under the Prison Rape Elimination Act. It's like, okay, this sounds pretty good. But here's where the clown of the week comes in. They talk about how, hold on, I got to make sure I've got these details in here. They're one of only, I think it's 3 in the state of Illinois that's actually passed out of the 15. Here we go, 4th. They're the 4th out of 15, which made me think, wait a second. We have 11 facilities, juvenile facilities in the state that haven't passed this audit to avoid sexual abuse in their facilities. 11 out of the 15. We're celebrating the 4, and I'm like, wait a second, why isn't it all 15? I think we could all agree that making sure there isn't sexual abuse in our juvenile centers in this state probably pretty important, not a partisan issue. So maybe, just maybe, Pritzker and your team get on that. Let's make sure all 15 can pass this audit, and let's not celebrate the 4 out of the 15 that do. Almost done here, just 2 more. Let's talk about Linda Johnson out of Waterloo. She was sentenced for theft of $135,000 from school district 196. I just hate seeing crap like this. You're taking it straight from kids. You are literally from these school districts that don't have the money they need to educate our students, and you are just pulling that money out and sticking it in your own pocket. It is a special level of pathetic and clown to be willing to do something like that. So Linda Johnson, you get called out for that as one of my clowns of the week. Last thing here. I saw this on Facebook this week, and I did a quadruple take. Expert claims that parents should ask babies for permission before changing their diapers. Lane's going to bring it up on screen and post. I kid you not. This is making the rounds on Facebook. I learned later it's actually from 2018. It's just remaking the rounds now. But literally, there's an expert out there who's saying that you should get permission. You should ask them for consent before changing their diapers. And you'll see in the screenshot that Lane posts in post, Meta backs it up and explains beneath. They're backing up this policy. But what you're going to see is this expert called a sexuality educator. She's going to look exactly like what you expect her to look, with the pink hair. And yeah, you're not going to be surprised when you watch this in post. But apparently we're supposed to ask our babies for their consent before we change their diapers. So welcome to 2025. I don't want to live on this planet anymore. All right, that's it. Closing thoughts for the week. Let's start with our team, since apparently they're all half asleep being worked to death. Chris, your final thoughts from the week.
So my final thoughts for the week, we're going to have a special guest for my thoughts of the week here who's joining us. My final thoughts of the week are once again on Senate Bill 9, the legalization of assisted suicide. There was supposed to be a hearing yesterday, once again, in regards to this bill, but they pulled back the hearing. They canceled it because they're going to have some tweaks to the legislation. If you're a conservative in this state and you care about, social issues and stuff like that, please stop stepping on my computer, Cat. If you care about things like that, please continue filing witness slips against Senate Bill 9. Put the pressure on your legislators on this issue. This is a handout for the insurance industry, so they don't have to pay out, the care for sick people, so they can just push them to kill themselves under assisted suicide. This is bad news. So please keep up the pressure on Senate Bill 9. Thank you.
Who was it? The cat was your special guest?
Yes, the cat was my special guest.
Oh, I thought you were going to have like your mother or your grandmother.
Oh, no, never.
All right. Yeah. Michael, your final thoughts for the week, bud.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're less than a month until Election Day. April 1st will be here before we know it. It's getting to the time where people start doing silly things and having stupid ideas. So make sure that if you're running or you're helping somebody that is running, especially in some of these critical races across the state, keep your head on straight, stay focused. Don't get sucked into this nonsense, because there'll be plenty of it to go around.
All right. I got a clown of the week. The sun's shining through like this little weird dot on my face. It's wonderful. All right. To our guests for being here. Patrick, I'm going to start with you. Thanks. For those who don't know, we had a cancellation and Patrick last second jumped on for us. That's why he's doing it from the car. Thanks for being here, Patrick. Talk about your race in 36th against Halpin. Lane in post will bring up a map of that district so people are aware of where it is in the state. Tell us what's the point? Why should people care?
Well, thanks for letting me come on here, and sorry I wasn't fully prepared for this. But no, I'm running against Mike Halpin because he was the key vote for the Safety Act, and that Safety Act has really made our communities less safe. We're all very committed to, law and order, and if you don't have law and order, then you really have, your school systems fail, your economy fails, and your families aren't happy. And so that's what really pushed me into the race here against Mike Halpin. I feel like it's a great opportunity for us to pick up this seat right here to the 36th district. It represents from Rock Island County to McDonough County, a lot of blue collar, folks down through there. And that's what I'm a blue collar truck driver. I represent the people better than Mike Halpin does. And I'm just firmly committed to saying, if you guys are ready for some change and true common sense, conservative ideas, that's looking out for the people, that's what I'm out here for. That's why I'm
All
doing
right. Well,
this.
appreciate you being on. I just want to talk about the 36th for a quick second. We do composite scores of each district on what's their partisan index. And in most of these districts in Illinois, they're getting worse for us over time, not better. But Senate District 36 is one of the few that's actually been getting better. Back in 2016, it was D7. It actually went to D8 in 2018, but then it moved to just D3 in 2020. It was just D2 in 2022. We've got it rated as a D4. This is absolutely a district that could potentially be in play. We don't have our scores yet for 2024. We'll get those soon. But this is a race people should watch. And I don't know if there'll be a primary or not. Patrick, I know I don't really know that race very much, and I haven't worked with you, but we'll see what happens in that race. But regardless of what happens, 36 should be on people's radar. We've got some tough holds in Illinois, but we would love to see some pickups in the Senate as well in November of next year. All right, Corey and Kevin, you both brought the heat, but Kevin makes me laugh on Twitter, so we'll let him go last.
Okay.
Corey, go ahead. Your final thoughts.
You're laughing with me, not at me, right?
It's a little both.
All right.
No, again, I appreciate you guys having me on, giving me the opportunity to be a part of the conversation. That's what people should want to do, is be a part of the conversation. If you can get involved local, because all government is local. Democracy is a contact sport. If you don't get in there and mix it up a little bit, you kind of lose your edge. I'm a hockey player. We've got our hockey playoffs right now, and so politics is the closest thing to hockey that I have found. Where if you like the contact, if you like to work hard, you can go far, because it's as easy as just showing up to your GOP meetings. It's as simple as calling your representatives, your senators, and saying, "Hey, how can I be of assistance?" So I just encourage everybody that's paying attention to this, go do more. Usually the ones who are listening to this, I kind of know the profile of who we are. We typically are already maxed to begin with, but we need to do more, because that's what's going to bring that middle over to us. And we'll pick up those seats, and we can start talking about how not losing isn't a victory. It's how we can actually start winning. And so again, thanks for having me on. And real quick plug for Patrick Harlan. Absolutely wonderful guy. He's the man up there. Anything you guys can do to help support him, please do, because I've worked with him for the last couple of years, and he's an awesome guy. So good luck, Patrick.
Nice. As a hockey guy, you think this new goaltender the Blackhawks got, is he for real or no?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not as big of a Blackhawks fan as a lot of people around here. So we'll see. The Blackhawks have been
You're not a Red
perpetually
Wings fan,
down.
at least, right?
No.
All right. Then we'll be okay.
We're
You
actually
can be back on then.
Edmonton Oilers fan is where we are in this household. But when you got the best hockey player in Connor McDavid on the ice, it's easy to be a fan of him. And so, yeah, we'll see.
Respect the Oilers.
All right, Kevin, final word. What's on your mind?
Thank you. Well, I guess people ask, what it's been like being the new chairman here in DuPage. I would say that the biggest stumbling block, the biggest issue that I've been trying my best to overcome is this defeatist undertone or defeatist attitude out there that it's sunk, it's all blue here in DuPage, there's no path to victory. And I just don't believe that to be true. When you look at these countywide races, we still have three of those offices. The other ones we haven't won have been incredibly close, 1, 2, 3 point losses. And that is despite really significant headwinds in money, controversy at the top of the ticket, and a party that's really been going through a lot of transition. I really do think it's doable to flip DuPage back red, maybe not right away, but I do think ultimately we can. I think we showed in Naperville. If we can flip Naperville City Council red, which it has been with the mayor and the council races, I think we can flip DuPage red too. So my takeaway for the folks out there would be, don't give up on DuPage County. We're going to get this done.
I like it. End with some positivity. Awesome. All right. Well, we got Blofeld over there and Chris with his cat and his special chair. You got it all this week. A Bond villain. I'm sure he's on the side of Jeff Bezos and Amazon's purchase of James Bond. Because Chris is on the side of
I don't
evil and
support
horrible.
anything Amazon does.
Yeah, you're always on the side of what's awful about our society. So I just assume you like it. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for being on here. To our guests, thanks to Lane Davis, our producer. As I said, 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks from your local elections. Make sure you get out and vote early, whether in person or by mail, and then go help your favorite candidate, go help your favorite fiscal conservative win their race. And we'll talk all about those races in the weeks to come. See you guys next week on the Smoke-Filled Room.